Hey guys, my name is Priscilla Elias and today we will talk about editing. More specifically, how to edit the perfect skin in Photoshop. And up front I'll tell you that I prefer using Photoshop for skin retouch simply because I can work with each and every detail by using Photoshop. I could do the skin retouch using Lightroom, but it would be a much more superficial editing and therefore not very reliable if you're going after high-end results. So I'll grab a cup of coffee and we will go through this together right after the intro. So here's my photo without any skin editing. Let's work on this. I'll come to layers here on the right. I will create a new layer by clicking the plus right here, create a new layer. The first thing I'll do is I'll work with the healing brush tool. So this one right here, I'll get rid of the bigger spots of the skin. Right click the mouse and I'll access the size of the brush and the hardness. I'll usually use the hardness in 0 or close to it. Well, actually, size, let's see. This is a good size. Option, I'll click over the area that I want to substitute a new area. Okay, and I'll start working on this. All right, here's a wrinkle. Get rid of this spot, a pimple, whatever it is. Get rid of this hole. Get rid of some lines. You always hit option, click over the area that you want to substitute the new area for. Option, substitute, poof, option, substitute, option, substitute. Smaller brush, get rid of this line here. Get rid of this here in my eye, this bigger mark. Yeah, I think we're good with the bigger spots. Let's see, before and after. So now I'll go to the next step. I'll make the skin look more even. So select both layers, Command J to duplicate them, Command E to turn them into one. Done that, I will duplicate it again so I have two layers that look the same, that already have this correction, and I'll name layer 1 copy as blur and the other one as texture. Then with the blur one, we'll come to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Let's click over the skin here and I need to see it really blurry. If I use it at around 5.4, I can still see some skin imperfections. I don't want to see any imperfections, so I guess at around 12 is good, 10 is good. Then I'll come to the texture layer here, come to image, apply image, and here in layer, I'll choose blur. So I just selected the blur layer here, blend in subtract, scale to offset 128. This will be a standard value you will always use when you're editing skin. And then still with the texture layer, you will come here to the blend-in mode of the layer where it says normal, and we will bring it to linear light. All right, I'll create a new layer and I'll bring it to the middle of blur and texture. I'll name it paint. What I'll do now is I'll actually paint. So I'll come to the brush tool here on the left, and by painting this layer, I will make my skin more even without losing the texture of it because I just separated the texture layer over it. So the texture is over the paint. So with the brush tool selected here, I'll come to opacity and I usually use it at around 9 or 10%. Don't use it too hard. Otherwise, you might lose details, you might get the skin too flat. And if you use too little, it might be quite some work. So it usually works just fine at around 10 with me. Opacity 10. I'll never be too close to the skin when I'm at this stage of the edit, otherwise I won't be able to see the overall image, and I want to see the overall image, not the very little details at this point. So here should be fine. Right click the mouse, size of the brush, this should be good. And now let's work on the paint. I'll click Option, I'll select this area for example, and I'll paint over it. So what it will do is it will get my skin more even. It will get it closer to the color I just chose here. But then I keep substituting that. I won't choose one color and use it all over the face, otherwise I will lose my shadows and highlights, and I don't want that. On the contrary, I want to keep that. I just want to make my skin look more even. So for example, I don't want this here. It's like a scar. So I'll get this area over here. Whoops. Make sure I get the paint layer selected. Then Option, substitute this. So the color will be more even. If you don't want some of the shadows, you can get rid of that at this point. So I don't want this shadow right here to be so hard. So I'm softening it. I like the shadow here. Now here's the critical part, for example. I don't want this part of my eyes dark. I want them bright. So I'll get this color over here and slowly substitute it in a way I'll make it look natural. So I'll work with the size of the brush, work with the colors. Let's make these lines a little bit more straight. Beautiful. I'll make this mark here a little bit softer. I'll choose this area here and paint over it so it'll be lighter. I don't want this here, so I'll make it look brighter as this part over here. Substitute this. Slowly paint it until it looks even. Same thing to the other side. Let's get rid of this tire dye. Let's make this shadow line a little bit more straight. Much better already. Make this softer a bit. I'll get this shadow softer. And later I'll also work with the eyes. I think they're a little bit dark. I have to make them lighter, but I won't teach you how to do that in this tutorial. If you want to learn that, I have an entire video where I do an entire editing. I will leave a link for that video in the description in case that's something that you're into. So if you want to learn how to do the full edit, you'll get access to it. Just follow the link in the description. I think we're good at this stage. Okay, so now I'll select all layers together, Command J, Command E, and I'll call it Details, because now I'll work on the details that possibly are left behind. So now I'll mainly work with the clone stamp tool. Opacity to about, let's see, first I'll use it at 100%, just to get rid of some bigger marks. So Option, click over the area that I want to substitute the old for the new. Get rid of these lines. You don't need to do this as much as I'm doing it. This is really up to your personal taste. So if you want to make it look more natural, maybe by now this is good enough for you. If you want it to be really Instagrammable, or if you want it to have that final art magazine touch, then you might want to work on these details up until the end, until the skin looks perfect. This process might take you from 10 minutes to an hour, depending on how much you want to work on the skin and how much there is to be worked at. And at this point, I can even get rid of this hair here. And for example here, I want it to look a little bit lighter. So sometimes I'll work with the clone stamp tool, and instead of using the normal mode here, I put it on lighten. And then I set the opacity for around 15%, size of the brush around this. For example, at this area, I want to make it lighter without changing the texture. So when I choose lighten, what the tool will do is it will lighten the areas that are darker than the area you're choosing from, but it won't touch the lighter areas. So sometimes this is a good tool to use depending on what you're working with. If I choose, for example, this dark area and I use lighten here, it does nothing. Simply because this is a darker area than this one that I'm choosing. I'll make some more minor adjustments with the normal tool, set to maybe 100%. You don't need to work at 100%. It really depends. Sometimes when you work at 100%, what it can do is like this, you know. You don't want this, so you can either work with the opacity at around 10, 12 and slowly change this, or you need to choose from an area that is really close to the area that you're substituting. Otherwise, the difference will be too big. For example, here if I use opacity 100% and I want to make this lighter, I need to select an area that's close to that, and still, you see, there's still like a little bit of a harsh difference. So you really have to work with the opacity and see what works for each part of your image. In the beginning this might be a little bit hard, but soon you'll get the feeling and understand what works with what, and it'll get faster and easier every time. Practice leads to perfection, you know. You can do the same with the hair here, get rid of this hair in front of my face. Set opacity to around 20%. Let's make this a little bit lighter. Lower the opacity a bit more. And then I'll do the exact same thing with the lower part of the body. I won't do it here just so the video won't get too long, but you will do the exact same thing. Here I'll show you the before and after. Before and after. And this initial skin editing took me about 25 minutes to do. This is how much of a difference it makes. And after I edited the rest of the skin and the eyes, here's the before and here's the after. And that's it. As you've seen, there are quite a few steps to be done when you want a high-end result. But it is not hard, it just requires some patience to work on details. Also important to mention that this might not be the one and only way to do skin retouching in Photoshop. It's just the way I do it. I've tested quite a few different methods and this is the one that worked best for me. You might find something else that works best for you though, and that's also totally valid and fine. Anyway, I hope this video was somehow helpful to you. I hope it helps you to do better skin retouching in Photoshop, and if you like this video, please consider subscribing to this channel and hitting the like button. That will help me a whole lot and I'd be super happy with it. That is all for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching me and I will see you in the next video. Ciao!